Nope. Go ahead.
Okay. Says here I got it. Okay, anyway, so here are the actual members of the ARRL Foundation. You can see you've got the Delta Division Director, myself, the Atlantic Division Director up in the, so you got the Southeast, you've got the Northwest, you've got the kind of Northeast, the Hudson Division in the which is New Jersey, New York area. Our ARRL CEO is a member of the foundation, and Carl from the Central Division, kind of in the middle of the country. So we're pretty well distributed throughout the whole U.S. Our treasurer is Rick Niswander, K7GM, and our secretary was Melissa Stemmer, K7CLO, who was the ARRL Director of Development, but she just left the company here about a week ago. So I've got to get this updated. We certainly don't have an ARRL Director of Development, nor do we have a secretary. So David Minster's got to deal with that. Let me see here. Why isn't it? There we go. So where does the money that we give, we give out in scholarships and grants come from, right? Well, it's not a money tree. We are very fortunate to have some pretty good donors. It's entirely funded by donations and grants from ARRL members, their families, and organizations. So basically, it comes from you guys, people that are ARRL members. If you're an ARRL member, we have ARRL scholarships that are funded as partially through your dues. Families of Silent Keys, and several of them, several organizations. And our current assets are about $7 million, mostly in endowments. So that's what a lot of the scholarships are given out each year, are based on the interest that we've got on the endowments. Where does the money go, right? Where does all the money go? Well, a big chunk of it, about $900,000 this last year, went into scholarships for worthy students, including at least one in the University of Oregon. We also gave away about $500,000 this year in monetary grants to ham radio organizations. These are our clubs through our club revitalization program or club grant program. Of course, we have to pay the ARRL for their administrative costs, so there's some reimbursement there to take care of the people that actually get paid for this. Nobody on the board of directors, by the way, takes a dime from the ARRL Foundation. We're all volunteers. The only ones that aren't are the people at the ARRL that handle the administrative side of it. They collect the scholarships, and they the ones that do the physical, cutting up the checks and sending them to the university. So that's all done through the administration at the ARRL, and they are paid staff. There's also investment management fees. We have a professional money manager who manages the endowments, make sure we get a good return on our investment. And so he does require a little bit of fees, a very small percentage. And we also have this year, starting this last year, an application processing software package that we're using from a third-party vendor. And we have to spend money to keep that thing maintained and keep it up to date. And of course, we also have to be audited as a 501c3. We are audited for IRS purposes by a third party. And all that has to be done, and that all costs money, about 15 grand a year just for the auditing part. As a matter of fact, if you care to look at our foundation annual reports, they are available online. The last one, I think, is for June of 2020. That's available there, but they're all online. Everything's out in the open. As I said, the board of directors themselves completely work essentially pro bono on the anything having to do with the foundation, from the president of the foundation all the way down. So let's talk about the ARRL Foundation scholarships. We just finished awarding here a couple of months ago, 139 scholarships with a combined worth of about $921,000. So quite a bit more. The values of those range from about $500 for some of the smaller scholarships up to $25,000. And that's, by the way, that $921,000 is up from about $560,000 in 2021, $287,000 in 2020, and $123,000 in 2019. So you can see it's almost doubling every year. Now, this year it will not be doubling again. And the reason for that, of course, is the fact the stock market has gone way down. As a result of that, there is a percentage of our endowments that are tied into equities, and those aren't doing so hot right now if you've looked at your 401k. And a huge thank to the Amateur Radio Digital Communications Group for their grants. They were about $700,000 of our grant money this year for the scholarships. Of that 921,000 came from the ARDC, and we are working on them now for the new 2022-2020 or 2023-2024 season. And my understanding is we're going to probably have about instead of 750,000, I think we got this year will be around 600,000 or so for next year. And that's primarily because the stock market is down and they're not making as much money on their investments as we are as well. So along with everything else, that's going to probably be reduced for next year. There are different types of scholarships that donors can set up. There are what are called individual scholarships. We have people that just decide to set up a scholarship. For example, that is a Chick Allen NW3Y scholarship. We also have a lot of in memoriam scholarships. These are set up by families in memory of an amateur who has passed. An example that's right here in the Northwestern Division, the Wilson Morgan WX7P scholarship. Also, we have several amateur radio clubs that have set up their own scholarships. For example, the Gwinnett Amateur Radio Society school scholarship. And a group scholarship. So you can have multiple clubs that get together and they establish and fund a scholarship. And a corporate scholarship. An example of that, of course, what I just mentioned is the ARDC. And we have specific scholarships that are set up by them that we award. I think there were probably maybe about 30 or 35 of our scholarships this year were entirely funded by the ARDC grants. And these can be set up as either permanently restricted or as temporarily restricted scholarships. And we'll talk about what that means. And it's how the scholarship is funded. Temporarily restricted scholarships, at this time, the way this is set up, money is donated all at once. So they basically give us a lump of money or periodically to provide scholarships. It's basically used until the money is used up per terms of reference document. We're going to talk about what a terms of reference document is. So somebody, for example, donates us a certain amount. We'll talk about that. If there's insufficient money available, no scholarship will be awarded until more monies are added. So we wind up with a lot of the scholarships that get down below the awarding level, and they kind of sit there, and we wind up eventually, if we can't get a hold of anybody, we wind up having to roll these into an ARRL scholarship. When funds are low, if we can't locate the donor, we essentially close out the scholarship. Any remaining funds get transferred to the Foundation General Fund, which, as I mentioned, funds our ARRL scholarships. The minimum amount required to establish a temporarily restricted one is $1,150, which is $1,000 for the scholarship plus a 1.5% fee to cover expenses of managing the fund. So if you wanted to set one up, Scott, if you wanted to set up one, there's your way to set up a Rosenfeld Memorial Scholarship, not Memorial Scholarship, hopefully, but a Rosenfeld Scholarship, or better yet, get
Sorry,
Hannah to
I had
set
to
one up
laugh.
for you.
Not yet.
An example of this, a donor gives us an amount, say $11,500 to fund a single $1,000 scholarship for the next 10 years. There'll be one 1,000 scholarship awarded each year until the account is reduced to zero. And the reason it's $11,500, as I mentioned, $1,500 of that goes to pay that 1.5% over the next 10 years. The scholarship is then closed out until more funding is forthcoming, and a lot of the scholarships are set up that way. Sometimes there are no viable candidates for a particular scholarship. None meet the terms of reference document. So those funds that were to be awarded that year automatically roll over to the next year. So we have several scholarships that might be $1,000 scholarship, and then we don't have any candidates for those because the terms of reference document might be too strict. And so those funds roll up. We might give $2,000 scholarships the next year, or hold that back and then maybe give $3,000 or whatever. So sometimes we don't always award every scholarship we have because there just aren't enough students. Permanently restricted scholarships. These are basically perpetual scholarships. They're funded by the investment interest only. So you put somebody gives us $100,000 and the $100,000 always stays in the bank. The account balance never goes below $100,000. And the scholarships are funded based on what we can get in interest on that $100,000. So this scholarship is perpetual and it never goes down. If earnings are alone are not enough to fund a scholarship, and that may be happening this year. There may be several scholarships where there just was not enough interest. You know, we count on there being 3 or 4% interest average to fund these scholarships, and the way the stock market is, essentially it's a negative territory for the year. So although we don't have all of our money in equities, obviously, we've got some in money, money markets and whatnot. We've got a very, very good financial manager who is a professor at North Carolina University in money management. So we've got a good smart guy handling this for us. Anyway, so what happens there is the same thing. If you don't have the money, the funds roll over to the next year. Let's talk about these terms of reference document. And this is where I really want the students here to perk your ears up, because this is the most important thing that you guys need to listen to here. The terms of reference document is a document or direction describing a donor's wishes when a scholarship is created. The ARRL does not make up these scholarships. We basically manage them for the people that fund them, and they tell us who they want these scholarships to go to, and exactly what type of student they want these scholarships to go to. The donor specifies the award criteria, the amount of the scholarship, the frequency of the award, the amount, and the type, whether it's a temporarily or permanently restricted. They also can stipulate specific vetting criteria, and I'll go through some common ones of these. Basically, they will say what type of student they want to be eligible for their scholarships. For example, and this is a requirement for every single scholarship the ARRL handles, they must be a licensed amateur at the time that they apply. And that's a requirement for all scholarships, but every one of the foundation, the terms of reference documents will have these words in here because it's a general requirement. A lot of them have license class restrictions. You know, there are several classes of amateur radio licenses, and several of them say must be a general class or higher. Now, not all of them. And what I want you guys, the people that are on here that are scholarship, or maybe think about applying for scholarships, I want you to think about these TOR requirements, because the more of these TOR requirements you can fulfill, the higher your chances are going to be to get a scholarship. So notice here that there's a lot of the scholarships say must be general class or higher. So if you're currently a technician class licensee and maybe haven't really done anything in amateur radio since you got your license, you know, you have to look in your wallet or your purse to remember what your call sign is. You might want to fix that, and you know, definitely would be there would be a lot more chances of you actually winning the scholarship if you're a general class or higher. Because what we do is we grade them, right? The extra class ones show more amateur radio activity by the fact they put in the extra effort to get an extra class license. They often move to a higher spot higher in the line than the people that have technician class licensees, and the ones at the back of the line are going to be the technicians. Now, not all the scholarships have this requirement, but many of them do. There's a lot of geographical ones, and we handle a lot of these every year. For example, the student must reside in Texas would be an example. We have several that, you know, must be in Northwestern Division, and which means one of the 5 states that make up the Northwestern Division of the ARRL. We have a lot of them that have major related requirements. For example, a STEM major, for example, a medical major, engineering. Sometimes there are no major related, and I like, when I'm vetting for these, I like to see, I like to see good tight requirements, because it makes it easier for me to vet the candidates. When you get a TOR that's very, very wide, I might have to look at 100 applications and then decide among those 100 to fulfill this scholarship. Once they get it, the ones that are a lot narrower, it's a lot easier for me to vet. Anyway, so a lot of these are going to have, because we are a technical organization, it's a technical hobby. A lot of them, and the people that are funding this are engineers and people that have gone through and gotten graduate degrees in technology areas and science. A lot of them require STEM students. There's a lot of them that specify a minimum GPA. 3.5 GPA or higher is common, but not all of them have that. Or they might just say it has to go to a top tier student. then you've got to look at, you know, and sort them out by grade point average and look at even the ones that are above 4.0, you know, and there's many that come in here, especially out of high school with grade point averages of 4.2, 4.3, up to about 4.5 out of 4. So that, you know, not 4.5 out of 5, but 4.5 out of 4. So once again, and that's, I mean, you're going to keep hearing this harped over and over again, is going to be STEM, and it's going to be minimum GPAs. Because once again, you know, that's one of the things we grade for is by grade point average. And a high level of amateur radio activity. Several of the scholarships require that the licensee not only be a licensee, but they be an active amateur and active in the amateur radio community and doing something with their amateur radio license besides just having it, they can get a scholarship or qualify for a scholarship. A lot of the tours require that there be some amateur radio activity involved as part of applying for an ARRL scholarship. Once again, not all, but some of them do. A lot of them want written documentation. So if you say that, oh yeah, I've done all this in amateur radio, they're going to want you to provide supporting documentation from a club officer or from somebody in a civic activity. If you're doing a civic activity, somebody from government that says, yeah, this person does this and they're great and wonderful, and you should give them a scholarship. So keep that in mind. There is at least one scholarship that is to go to somebody with a proven disability. And if you do have if you are applying for the ones that have proven disability, make sure you provide written proof of the disability from a doctor. You can't just say that you're disabled and not provide proof. Some of the tours are specific for an institution. For example, looking for a student who either is attending or will be attending Texas A&M University, or it could be University of Oregon if somebody was a University of Oregon alum and wanted to set something up. And important, all scholarships require that college and/or high school transcripts and other supporting documentation be supplied by the deadline given. If you're just going into college from high school, you should have all your at least 3 years of high school transcripts. If you're in college, maybe as a first or second year, you might have your high school and your college transcripts. And if you're a junior going in or going to be a senior, maybe just your college transcripts will help. But the more documentation you can send us, the better. But all of them do require that we see your transcripts. That's really the only way that we can sort by grade point average and look at the classes that you've been taking. And by the way, we do review the transcript. We take a look and see if you're a STEM major that you're taking STEM classes. So, I mean, we have ways to verify that. Here's an example of a terms of reference document. This is the Wills Morgan WX7P Northwestern Division Scholarship. It's a single $2,000 a year scholarship that must be given to a student who resides in the ARRL Northwestern Division. I mentioned that's the 5 states that are listed there. Is or will be pursuing a STEM curriculum major, science, technology, engineering, or math, has a cumulative GPA or 3.0 or above, and that could be either in university, college, junior college, or high school. Be an active radio amateur and show proof of this activity. Here's an example of what I talked about, where you have to show us that you are actually an active ham. Hold at least a general class license. If you're a technician class licensee, you're not going to qualify for this. I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I have a question on that, on the showing proof of activity. So is that like showing up to the Monday Night Net, or being a part of a local club, having your book filled with the call signs that you've made contact with? What kind of proof are you meaning?
Well, what we're talking about there is proof is a letter a letter from the club president saying that yes, this person's a member of the club and they're active in the club. Would be an example of that. There's another way that we have it. If you're familiar with QRZ.com, which is kind of the yellow pages for amateur radio,
Right.
I would recommend that everybody have something on their QRZ page that talks about what they do in amateur radio. And because we do look up QRZ lookups, and we can tell if somebody just got their license last week. I mean, it's kind of that's really a good tool for us. So any way that they can show proof of activity. Like I say, a letter from a club official saying this person's active in our club, would, would work just fine. And like I said, we can
Okay.
also verify that by looking at QRZ. If somebody says they've been licensed for a long time and they're really active, we look on their QRZ and they have 0 count on QRZ.com, then it kind of raises the question. And of course, we can also verify license classes by looking at QRZ. That'll tell us what license class that person is. Justin, you had a question?
Yeah, so as we get into lowering or applying for these applications, is it going to be, I'm currently tech, but I'm studying for my general. So when I go into my application process, I may have my general class license. Will that work for the tour, or is that going to be too close?
No, if you have it, what I would do is wait till you get it and then apply.
Okay.
Because what we go on is what you guys submit, right? And we'll actually go out and look at it and say, well, this guy, looks like he upgraded. But when we're sorting the spreadsheet with all these 139 students on it, I would say work very hard to get it. The deadline for this year is going to be December 31st. So between now and December 31st, and I would wait to apply till you physically got that general in your hand. And it's going
Just
to
my
help you
general or my
immensely, by the
certificate
way.
of completion?
Yeah,
Okay. And I
exactly.
could submit that
So
with the paperwork.
yeah, yep. And then you submit that you're a general and you're okay. And so for me, this is one of the easier ones to award, right? I've got a giant spreadsheet. I can sort by the states. I can sort by GPA. I can sort by what license class is. I've got 3 different levels I can sort for here, and I can take the 139 or 100. I think this year we had 175 students, and I can, reduce it down to like 10 or 15, and then I only have to vet 10 or 15 instead. And then I start digging into the amateur radioactivity and the and whatnot. So this to me is one of the ones I enjoy working on, not only because I live here in the Northwestern Division, but because it's a pretty tight terms of reference document. So how does one apply for a foundation scholarship? Well, first thing you do is go to our website, ARRL.org/scholarship-program, and follow the directions that are shown in there. And by the way, even though the opening date, I think, was October the 1st, I don't know that the website's been updated for this season yet. Like I said, the person that was in charge of it at headquarters just quit, and I'm not sure if anybody's picked that up yet. But but take a look at it. If it's not updated, they will update it shortly. What I would do is consider maybe sending between now and maybe the beginning of December to get all your documentation together and then submit your application. And you used to have to apply for individual scholarships. And this year and last year, we are using a third-party software vendor now that does kind of the pre-sorting for us. And so it will decide which scholarship it thinks you qualify for. And Joshua, you had your hand up?
Yes, I have another question for you. I know a lot of other scholarships require a basically several paragraphs of of typing whatever. Do any of the scholarships for ARRL do that, or do
Require,
most-
yeah, the answer is yes.
Okay.
And keep in mind, for any of these scholarships, the more documentation you can give us, the better. A lot of the questions that are in here are describe your amateur radio activity, describe your civic activity. And so a lot of these are, when you're applying, you've got to essentially do an essay part. And I check into the net every week is probably not going to cut it. But I'm vice president of the Ham Radio Club. I've been the secretary. I did all these events. I did field day. I got DXCC, whatever you can do in amateur radio. The more that you can show, the better. And the worst thing you can say is, my dad got a license, so I got a license, and please give me a scholarship. Okay, anyway, so you don't need to apply for individual scholarships. You just give us all the information, the software figures out which scholarship you apply for. And this is all done by a third-party company called Kaleidoscope. We used to have to all do this manually, and it makes it a lot easier now that we're able to have some of the pre-vetting done by Kaleidoscope. Some application tips. Number one is know the dates, right? When the scholarship application window opens and when it closes. And this year, I believe they did open the window on October 1st. And but by the way, most of the scholarship applicants wind up turning the documentation in the last week of December. Just like they don't wait to turn their term papers in at the beginning of when they're due, they usually turn them in at towards the very end. Fill out all the questions on the online application, especially the ones having to do with amateur radio activity. Don't leave anything blank. Even if you say it doesn't apply to you, put in there doesn't apply to you. Keep in mind that some of these scholarships have financial considerations where they have to go to a financially needy student. So don't leave out your financial information. That's in there for a reason. If the reason is because some of the scholarships require that, and not providing us that is going to automatically delete you from being eligible for a scholarship. Input PDF or JPEG copies of all required documentation. That's primarily your letters of recommendation, your activity, your transcripts, etc. And keep in mind there are no age requirements for the majority of scholarships. Some of the scholarships say that they're looking for a young applicant. Some of them don't, and we've actually given some scholarships last year to people that were in their 50s, who had either glass ceiling in their current job. There was a woman that worked for NASA as an admin and wanted to move into a higher position at NASA and couldn't because she didn't have a college degree. So she actually got very active in NASA Amateur Radio Club, actually put on a NASA On the Air event that she put together along with a couple other hands there at NASA. And she ended up, because of that, she ended up winning a scholarship. So, don't just because you're an old guy doesn't mean you can't, or a old gal doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be able to get a scholarship. But like I say, some of them do look for young people. We have to kind of decide what that is. There's no specific age, but and young to me means in their 20s or younger. The scholarship vetting process. This is a very labor-intensive process for us. Many hours of work from start to end of that whole award process. And I keep in mind that all of us that do the vetting are volunteers. None of us are paid to do this. Essentially, you're working with a spreadsheet that's about 180 rows deep by about 200 columns wide. It would basically be put up on a wall, it would fill a wall. And we're having to go through and sort all this data. Now, Kaleidoscope has taken some of that work out of it, but I don't trust the Kaleidoscope data. I didn't this year. Hopefully they can get some of the bugs worked out of it. For the entire committee, which is all volunteer plus headquarters staff, we roughly spend about 700 hours, combined to get this done every year, and working with the collecting the scholarship applications, vetting candidates, and then working with the schools to get the money distributed. And by the way, the funds do not go directly to the student; they go to the school that the student is going to be going to. So no, they can't go out and spend it on toga parties. They've got to. It's going to be used by the university for their scholastic efforts. So how do we actually vet the scholarships? Well, every scholarship committee member is assigned a list of scholarships for them to review. There's usually 10 to 15 each, and I get a lot of the ones that are up here in the Pacific Northwest, plus some that are in common. For example, the ARDC scholarships. We always vet for the largest dollar value scholarships we have first. So if we've got $5,000 scholarships, we do those. If we've got $1,000, we do those after the 5,000s, and finally work our way down to 500. That's the reason. The reason for that is we want to make sure that the scholarships get the scholarship recipients get the largest scholarship that they are qualified for as part of the competitive process. The member reviews and vets candidates according to the data for each scholarship against the terms of reference document. And sometimes there are no qualified candidates. For example, you might have one that says that the candidate must be in reside in Delaware. And no students from Delaware applied for a scholarship. That scholarship will not get done. For the very high dollar value scholarship, typically the $5,000 and above, which are primarily the ARDC scholarship, we have done personal interviews via Zoom, where we get together with a couple of candidates, excuse me, with a candidate, with 2 or 3 committee members, conduct these interviews and find out a little bit more than what's in the paper. You know, sometimes you get a much better view of the candidate by talking to them in person and getting, you know, their and basically, you know, picking up on their enthusiasm for amateur radio versus just what you see on paper. So on the higher dollar scholarships, we generally do in-person interviews via Zoom. Each member then determines a first, second, and usually a third, either a fourth or a fifth, either there could be. And that's because, you know, we're all working on these in parallel. And as we work on them in parallel, there may be a candidate that qualifies for a $5,000 scholarship that one reviewer is working on, and a $2,000 scholarship that somebody else is working on. Well, if we both submit those as our number one choice, the scholarship will be awarded the higher dollar scholarship will be awarded. And then I've got to go back and I got to find who was number 2 and submit them. If that one's taken by somebody else, I got to go to number 3. I've sometimes had that go all the way up to number 5 or 6 or even 7th choice to make sure that gets awarded. But that's good news, because that means there were 6 students that got higher value scholarships. Starting with the highest value, each candidate's qualifications are discussed based on the total requirements. So we basically get together on a Zoom meeting when all this is done and verify that everybody agrees with the scholarship recommendations. We then submit the consolidated list of the whole foundation board. So what we're on the scholarship committee is just a fraction of the members that are on the board. We're basically divided into 2 groups. One works on grants. One works on scholarships. Since I'm the vice president, I get to work on both. They didn't tell me that when they elected me to that. The list of approved candidates is then forwarded to the ARRL Development Department, who then notify the recipients, and then finally the checks are cut and sent to the recipient's college finance department for future distribution. And so sometimes if the kids don't use all the money, they'll hold that. Sometimes the student may have not decided what university they're going to go to yet, in which case then the ARRL will hold the money until we're notified where the student actually lands as far as where they've been accepted. So like I mentioned, the student never sees the money. It always goes to the university. So how can you actually win a foundation scholarship, right? How can you give yourself an edge? Well, number one is, if you're not a ham, make sure you're a ham. That's number one. The higher the class, the better. You've heard me say that before. Number 2, go in and read and understand the TOR document. The more of the TOR requirements on the whole that you can fulfill, the higher your chances are going to be to get a scholarship. Remember, it's a competitive environment. Be an ARRL member. ARRL membership, I think it's like $27 a year, $26 or $27 a year. Maybe Hannah can pipe in what the actual amount is, I forget. But some of the requirements require that the candidate be an ARRL member, even as a student member. So once again, if you want to, and that also, by the way, does show us a higher level of amateur radio activity, the fact that somebody has gone through and is an ARRL member. After all, we are the ones that are sponsoring the scholarships.
I
Get
don't
on the
know.
air.
I don't remember what it is because we have family memberships.
Oh, okay. But I think it's like $26 a year. It's about half what the normal ARRL membership is. It's not a whole lot.
For students, it's 25, but we do have to call the ARRL to get it.
Okay, all right. Get on the air, show activity, right? Be radioactive. Join the local radio club, right? Get you know, you guys that are on Ducks on the Air, you know, be active in the club. You know, get Hannah to write you a letter to the ARRL and you know, have her tell what a great job you're doing in amateur radio. So be radioactive. The worst thing you can do is have a license and you know, the worst thing that we want to see is somebody who gets their license a week before they apply for a scholarship and has never been on the air. I mean, it's like, well, if I have a license, I can get it. Well, you're going to be in line behind everybody else that's been licensed for longer. And, like I say, be radioactive. I can't stress that enough. Join national and local and national radio clubs. A good example of that is be active in your own University of Oregon club that Hannah and Scott have put together. By the way, I want to commend both of them for the work that they have done in promoting that and putting that on the air and doing what they did for the World Track Championship. Right, Scott, you're really Superman.
Well, Hannah might not be able to reply right now as she's driving. So,
Oh, okay.
listening.
I'm not driving.
Oh, you're not driving. Okay. Take it
No,
away,
I don't know
Hannah.
when I'm getting mine. About what? What?
Well-
Mike's talking.
Well, okay. Carry on.
Keep in mind the scholarship, like everything else, is a competitive environment, right? So excel in your studies, and I'm going to talk about why you want to do that. As I mentioned, for a lot of the scholarships, you require at least a 3.0 out of 4. Not all of them. We've awarded some scholarships to people that had 2.3 grade point averages. But majority of them, over 50%, do require at least a 3.0 grade point average. The higher, the better, right? When we do our scholarship sorting, one of the things we can easily sort for is by grade point average. However, if you're expecting to get one of the upper dollar scholarships, the 10, 20, 10, 15, $25,000, you better have at least a 3.5 or better, because we've got a lot of students that have very high grade point averages. Your chances of getting a $25,000 scholarship without at least a 3.7 grade point average is going to be pretty slim. Have other interests, right? We've had kids that have been black belts in Taekwondo. We've had kids that have been ballerina prima donnas. We've had kids that have been our piano for virtuosos, but they also do amateur radio. So let us know what your other interests are. And what's one of the things we ask, by the way, when we do in-person interviews, is we ask what other interests. Because we're looking for well-rounded kids, not kids that are just have their mind focused with radio. Don't major in amateur radio. We've had a couple of students that I like to think of, one in particular, who is a world-class contester student ham, and has been all over the world as part of major contesting teams and won major contests. But because of that, his grade point average has suffered, and for a while he was down in the 2s. He's since brought it up back into the 3s. So don't major in amateur radio. Don't make it so much of your life that you're in college and university to learn, and don't major in amateur radio unless they have that as an offering. Maybe U of O sometime will have an amateur radio major, but probably not. And find mentors, right? Find mentors within your own club. Scott is a great mentor for the University of Oregon club. Several other people on there as well, but find great mentors and learn about what amateur radio is. So that's all I have. Are there any, I'm going to stop sharing now. And are there any questions? I answered a few in the middle of the thing, but are there any questions, especially from the students?
This is a really good time to not be shy.
So
There's Frank. Hello there to you, Frank. Oh, and Joel's on there too. Joel at W7PBX is actually one of our donors for scholarships.
Yeah, hi Scott and Mike. This is Frank, KB7NJV.
Yeah, hi Frank. Welcome, and hello there to you, Joel.
How about from up at Portland State, Andy?
Yeah, so I have a bunch of questions. I was waiting for students down there to ask first, but sorry, I did not realize that this was going to be on scholarships, and Scott, forgive me for not realizing that you were going to have this today. We would have had a lot more people on board. So let me ask.
But it's recorded. It is recorded.
Oh, good point. I'll actually throw it to them. So let me ask some questions. The first is, I saw the list of looked like 3 or 4 dozen scholarships on the website. are the students just required to go through and look at each one to see which ones fit? Is there a spreadsheet?
No. That used to be the case.
Mhm.
And they used to have to apply for each individual scholarship. They would tick mark which ones they wanted to apply for. And of course, they would apply for ones that they didn't qualify for a
Right.
lot of times. And now that's all being taken care of. And the software, the Kaleidoscope software, will go through and pre-sort. For example, if a scholarship has a requirement that they must reside in Oregon, it will go through and only give me the kids that reside in Oregon as candidates.
Okay,
So they used to have to do that. They no longer need to do that. They only need to, well, I recommend they go and look at the tours. They can see what kinds of scholarships are out there and what some of the requirements are. So they can kind of make themselves fit as many of those requirements as they can.
right. So they have to go to Kaleidoscope and actually start applying in order to get that list. I guess that's the point, right?
Well, you can actually go on the website and get the list. And what Kaleidoscope is going to ask them is where they live, what their license class, it's
Yep.
basically all the data. And
Yep.
then it's going to get into questions like, describe your amateur radio activity. Are there any civic activities you're involved with, right? It's going to ask you family income question. Maybe if Hannah's on here, she can discuss about some of the things that she had to fill out when she did her application this last year.
Yeah, all that sounds about right. It's family income, your radio activities, about like your club and your personal activities and your club's activities, your license class, of course, your GPA, your school, all the stuff you've already talked about, basically. It's just like a standard application. Plus, for hobbies, there's hobbies other than radio and activities within radio. So all of that kind of stuff. And I think Mike talked about basically everything else.
Yeah, what your intended major is, right? That kind of stuff.
So I'm
Oh
trying
yeah,
to get
that too. More about like you as a student, like
sure.
major and stuff like that, and interests.
So you fill out all of this information and then it gives you the ones that match. Is that true?
It gives us the one. It gives us the ones that match.
Okay.
I don't know, Hannah. Do they send you anything to show you which ones it thinks you qualify for?
I think at the end, or actually this year it didn't. Last year it did.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think it
last
did
year-
this year.
Like not this current like calendar school year, but the year before this, it was like through the ARRL's website. So it was like a different program, and then you got to like kind of choose which ones applied to you. It like selected them for you and then told you which ones you qualified for. But this year it didn't. It just like they did it for us in a spreadsheet, and we didn't know, but you just know there's a bunch. So
Anna, do you have
All right, thank
anything
you.
to say? Do you have anything to say about recommendation letters?
yeah, so I would like, if you're applying, I would start thinking about recommendation letters, who you could ask within radio and just like personal, because I think you need 3, no matter like which actual scholarship you're applying for. You need 3. It's like a personal reference, an academic reference, and then like a community reference or something. So for like the community reference, I did like a radio person in like locally, because you want someone who like knows about what you're doing like within radio, but also like academically, so that they can like vie for your like academic success and that you do well in school. So
And by the way, those letters of recommendation are primarily a requirement for the ARDC scholarships, the larger dollar ones. Some of them do not require those, but once again, unless you send those, you won't be considered for the larger dollar scholarship. So I would have them encourage all the students to send in letters of recommendation, because it widens the circle of of scholarships that they can qualify for.
And actually, if I can interject, one of the things that when I was talking with the Kaleidoscope people, because they had some issues with the forms, I was actually a recommender this year as well, was I thought that they should have room for 4 recommendation letters, because if you ask 6 people, you might get 3, and you need 3. So there should be a way, because Kaleidoscope, when you put somebody's information in, it contacts them on your behalf. And whether or not they get to it, basically, you know, some people, you really have to lean on them to get
Well,
something done, because they're
And
busy
that was a
too.
problem with Kaleidoscope this last year was when we went to vet the scholarships, we might have had some of the students, the Kaleidoscope software showed that they were there because they had apparently been contacted for a reference, but the people never provided the reference. So that was a problem. Hopefully they're going to get that figured out for this year, but
Well, I'm just talking about from a personnel level, you
yeah,
know, not personal, but a personnel level. Some people are just really busy.
no,
And
I know,
you
I know,
know,
it's
and
that's
December
a problem that we,
31st, December 31st, it's a good idea to have a whole stack of them that you can pull out of your hat, because somebody might have told you a month ago, oh, I'll get it done. And a month has gone by and they didn't get it done.
right.
I know I'm not running this meeting, but I've seen Justin's like virtual hand up for a while, so I just wanted to point that out.
Oh, I see it now. Go ahead, Justin.
Thank you. And you said something about location. So my license is KN6. So my permanent address is in California, but I'm up here in Oregon for school for the next 2 years. So for location, where would that be based?
It would be your home address where your mail goes.
And Justin, what's your call sign?
KN6 OJR.
OJR. I had it wrong. There we go. Now it's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it would be where you live, where where your mail goes. So, I mean, if you're at a university, you're there temporarily. You're not there permanently.
Okay.
So it'd be your home address.
May I
Okay,
ask,
yes, go ahead. Tom?
Justin, where do you vote?
Oh, okay. That would be a good way to answer that question. So yeah, I would be voting in California, so I would put that address down. Okay.
Okay.
Any more questions? Andrew, did we get your questions answered? I
Um,
don't see.
So I do have a few questions actually that have come up since other people have asked questions. One, my first question is on the website, do we apply through ARL still? Is there gonna be a link on that page that tells?
It provides a link over to Kaleidoscope.
Okay,
And maybe Hannah can, because I'm not on the applying end of it, I'm on the vetting end of it. And I've
right,
actually never applied for it, but I'm sure there's a link from the ARRL Foundation website page that takes you over to Kaleidoscope to submit the application.
okay. And then my other question right away is, you guys said on Kaleidoscope that you have to, that you have the letter of recommendations. So are we not supposed to go and get those letter recommendations, have them in our hand and then give them to you? Or is it only via give them a name and address and they do to get that information? How does that side work? Because I was assuming I was going to go grab it and then send it in kind of thing. So
I think you could do, what I would recommend is if you can do both.
Okay.
Scott,
I know for a fact that I don't think there's actually an easy way to send in a recommendation as the applicant.
Okay.
Because I was a recommender as well for a scholarship. And my recommendation, basically Kaleidoscope sent me the invite and I had to create an account and check in as me and upload my recommendation for person X. So, I
Oh,
mean, it can't hurt to have a copy of it. If they're happy to,
Right.
if they're willing to send it in, they should be willing to send it to you too. And I actually sent a copy to the person I recommended as well.
And I think you could also just send it to the ARRL Development Department directly, and they could get it into the right hands when it comes to the vetting process.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, because if, as you were saying, Scott, that if people, get that email and then never do anything about it, because, oh, I'll do it later, and then later
Yeah.
never comes.
Yeah.
If it's
We
already
actually,
bought
we,
them,
we
got a
actually
physical
had,
copy.
we actually had to chase people down, or the development department had to chase people down to get those done to satisfy the ARDC requirements.
Okay, yeah,
So
'cause
this was done well after the deadline, but it wasn't the student's fault. It was the person doing the vetting, or not, I mean, the person doing was supposed to be providing the recommendations fault. And
Which
so they had to
really
chase a
means,
lot of people
which-
down to get
I hate
that.
to say it, which really means it's the student's fault. And that's why I say you really have to choose carefully and choose more than you think you're going to need.
right, that's why I was wondering if it's possible to do it that way, so that way, you can hound them a little bit better. It
Yeah.
might be easier to get a physical copy from them first versus, oh, yeah, I'll go online later and take care of that for you.
What-
Kind of
What I,
thing.
what I would recommend is that you ask multiple people and then, get some people who are willing to do it at a moment's notice and say, I'm gonna need 3. Could you write one? And if I need you to upload it, I need you to upload it immediately. Just
Okay.
have another one waiting.
So I guess my next question then on that as well, is it an upload or is it like a lot of other documents where you type it in the little field?
Drag and drop.
Drag and drop.
Drag and
Okay, so
drop.
I can get them to type it ahead of time and
Yep.
then, okay, cool.
I will say,
I have to give my roommate a ride. I don't think I'm really needed anymore. My dad can answer questions for me as he's gone through the application process with me. But thank you so much, Mike. I'm sure that was very informative for people who didn't know about scholarships. And I, of course, like to hear it again because maybe slightly different than last year. And Kaleidoscope was kind of weird last year. So yeah, it's good to hear more about it. And we really appreciate you coming and talking to us. Thank you.
Problem, Hannah. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here this evening.
And Mike, I'm still trying to drag her up to Radio Scappoose one weekend.
Yeah, I do. I have a pretty good sized ham radio station by comparison to some people. And we do a lot of, I've got several towers and several operating positions, and we do a lot of contests here. I'm a contest person, so we bring people in, we have a good time, and even new hams. We bring new hams in too. So I'm glad to do what I can to give back to the hobby. I see something. I'm gonna go through the stuff in chat here. I guess that's it. Let's see. Well, thank you, Joel.
I think
For your
Andrew had a
comment.
question too. Andrew, did you have
Okay.
another question? Okay.
no, I'm good. Thank you.
I really wanted Toto to come by for this.
Anyway, if there's no more questions, I guess I can turn it over to Scott. Are you guys going to conduct a meeting, or am I the meeting?
No, you're the meeting today because Dean had to run and Hannah just had to go. And I can say that our next meeting is in 2 weeks, and I'm sorry for the barking dog. Hold on a sec.
Hey, Mike, I'm part of Oregon State's club. Do you mind if I get your email if I have any other questions?
Yeah, and matter of fact, if you would like to have me give a presentation to your club, get in contact with w7vo@arrl.org. I'm on page 15 of every QST magazine for the Northwestern Division Director. So send me an email. I'd love to do this presentation for the competition.
All right.
One last question, Mike, if you have time.
Yeah.
You might have mentioned this and maybe I missed it, but are these scholarships purely, addressing the issue of tuition, or can a student say, hey, I want to do this research project over the summer and involves radio and so forth? Can they leverage this program to get funding for
These are scholastic scholarships. So they're They're to fund, fund education. Now, you could also apply for either primarily through ARDC, but you could get grant money from ARDC for research projects.
Okay,
That would be a great place to get that done, would be contact ARDC directly.
Perfect.
These
And-
are
and-
primarily
And Josh, that's
scholarships for
how we got the
scholastic
grant.
purposes.
That's how we got the grant for the Ducks Club in the first place. That was
Was
done
through
through
ARDC
ARDC
grant.
directly.
yeah,
Yeah, and also the ARRL Foundation does also provide grants on the grant side, not the scholarship side, but the grant side for research projects. And so that would be funded through that side of the ARRL Foundation. So there you do a whole proposal, right? And budget and the whole bit to do a research project. And then that would be either partially or wholly funded. ARDC provides up to like $100,000 in grants for projects such as that. In ARRL, it's somewhere around, I think it's around $3,000 to $5,000 max. So the best thing to there would be to go through the ARDC, Amateur Radio Digital Communications Group, and apply for one of their grants. Will be your best opportunity there, Josh.
okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay,
How about the Colorado crew?
the what?
The Colorado crew that's here. Natalie,
Why so?
Victoria, Yvette. You guys know
Oh, I
where you're
see- I
going to
see it.
school?
I see a couple of KF0 calls.
Okay. So I know that I want to go to CSU Pueblo if I can. So that's probably where I'm going to be primarily trying to get to.
That's Natalie talking.
Yeah, sorry. The reason I'm not using my tablet, which is linked in with the meeting, is because it's really delayed and it's not receiving very well.
Okay, you guys have any questions?
None come to mind.
Okay, well, I know you guys were gonna go to Kembo, right? Hopefully it's not too late for that.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We'll
And
skip it for
Victoria
today.
and Natalie must be related because their call signs are one letter apart.
Yep, we took the test right after each other.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
Who's
you.
older?
I am.
Wait, was that
Victoria is
Victoria? Okay, by what, like 3 minutes or something?
2.
2 minutes, okay.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I'm gonna say 7-3 to everybody and go get my dinner ready. I want to thank the University of Oregon and the Ducks Club for having me here this evening, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do this also for the club at Oregon State. So, or if there's if anybody, some of people here from other places too, if you would like to have a repeat of this presentation for your group, just let me know and I'll be glad to do it. That's it's what
will
I
probably
do.
be Emailing you as well.
Okay,
Hey, and
sounds
also,
good.
Mike, are you gonna be at Rick Real in 2 weeks?
I will not be at Rick Real. I'm going to be down in California at PacificCon,
Okay.
giving this presentation and one on RF exposure, how to meet the RF exposure rules for the FCC and mitigation.
Well, you could
So
just
it's going
run
to be all about
QRP.
RF exposure and mitigation.
You could just run QRP.
Well, yeah, but QRP with the antenna, how many feet away from your head?
Oh, well, if it's 60 feet up in the air, who cares?
But anyway, so I'm doing a technical talk, but also giving a pitch for the ARRL Foundation while I'm down there. So, but anyway, I'm going to say 73. Oh, there's Frank. Hi, Frank.
Yeah, hi, Mike. I heard you say you're gonna be at Pacificon. I'll see you down there.
Oh, good. I will be down there. I'm headed down there Thursday. I'm giving 2 presentations on Saturday.
Yeah, well, this one was really good. I guess is one of the 2 titular youth coordinators for ARRL for Oregon. I want to say thanks. It's really well done. And Scott, thanks to you two for putting this together.
Oh, it's Hannah and Dean and myself. So,
Yeah.
Well, and Frank, if there are any groups you would like me to do this for that you're associated with, let me know.
and don't you have a granddaughter who's licensed? At least one, Frank?
I have 2 now.
You have 2 now. That's right.
Yeah. Well, you've met Elizabeth.
I have.
Don't think you've met her younger sister who got licensed a couple of months ago.
I have not.
She's 12, but
Maybe we'll drag all the kids up to Radio Scappoose one weekend.
and Scott, did you say you recorded this session?
I did. In fact,
How-
I'm
how
gonna
do
stop
we
recording.
How do we?
Well, I'll put it up on YouTube as a private thing and send the link out.